what's on my mind, what's out there, what am I seeing, what inspires me, what doesn't. And I really want to start with a very basic principle. So why do I love the financial services industry, and why should you all love the financial services industry? It is a wonderful industry to build in. You know, if you think about the basics, the kind of simplicity of what this industry provides, it's a fragmented industry. It's got phenomenal economics of scale. It has a very high mission that we don't talk enough about, ultimately helping Canadians and many in the Canadian economy ultimately succeed. And then if you take that anywhere in the world, it's the same thing. It's got a phenomenal capability to really drive change. That said, there's a reason why it's fragmented. It's because it's a sea of the same. It's an industry that ultimately sits there and does the same thing over and over and over again. There's no differentiation. And that is the opportunity in many ways for where we sit. As big as this industry is, as much as the market is growing because the economy is growing, because people are saving, people are investing, people are building, and the TAM continues to expand, no one is standing up and taking ownership. And that is a huge opportunity. So let's, I want to just talk a little bit about some of the key principles that are ultimately need to be the conditions that need to be there for us to be successful, in my opinion. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of the big changes and what it looks like that we all need to be aware of. When I sort of sit back and I think a little bit about this issue of kind of how it operates today, there's a reason why this industry sits exactly how it does today. Why is it that no one is standing up and taking ownership? And that is because 9 out of 10 executives who run this in this industry today think today is the best day it's ever been, meaning that they would love it for nothing to change. And that is a fundamental problem. Why? Because we live in a business that has phenomenal agency, huge economics. It has great scale. And they don't like the idea of disruption. They don't like the idea of change. Change means we have to restructure. We have to rethink what we do. And that is a huge crux that many in the industry face today. At the same time, the regulatory capture of our industry ultimately enables the major and large incumbents to play that game and make it a headwind against the challengers. Those who ultimately have to wake up every day and find a way to try to tell a different story, a different meaning, to try to win different customers. And it ultimately is a real challenge. And so this dynamic has been enabled because of the structure that we sit, and the incumbents are happy with what it is. Then when you sort of look at the other parts of it, for the most part, for the last 30, 40 years as this industry has developed and grown, most people have been really happy to remain at the front end of the business, the sexy part of the business, which is I deal with customers, I sell my product, I look at my rates, all these really important things. And really ignored many of the more unsexy parts of the industry, which are the pipes, the infrastructure, the processing. And they've been willing and accepting of allowing that to be done by others in a way that is ultimately like a utility. And today, when you sit back and look at innovation and opportunity, the reality is that the infrastructure has been ignored. And that infrastructure has led to a significant challenge in being able to do anything of real meaningful change. And it's really important when we get into what that looks like. So the other really important principle that to me that was always inspired me was, I'm an engineer by background, so I studied something called unit economics. And I came into this industry and everyone used to talk about average economics, which is on average we make money. And what happens is that when you have average economics, you get this mindset that says bigger, is more profitable, smaller is not. And as a result of that, you start to build your business strategy, your business plan, your business thinking, your principles around that mindset. And I always found that ridiculous because, in fact, the way you run a business is you have to understand your unit economics. And when you understand your unit economics, your basic principal cost inputs, you can understand what you could actually deliver. But the problem is, to do unit economics, you have to actually understand the infrastructure. You have to understand the back end. You have to understand the process, what it actually takes, what's the service level offering that you require. And these things are just things that most people don't actually think about because we spend so much time talking about my rates, my products, my services, me, 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 me. The last thing that I think is really fascinating and important is that this is an industry that's very self-centered. And what do I mean by that? It's about you. It's about the company. It's not about the client. It's not about how the customer is thinking, what's their problem, what's their job, what are they asking you to do. It's about how they have to find a way to interact with you. And what that feels like for many customers, and many of you, all of you are customers, it feels like seams. It feels like challenges. It feels really clunky. You know, I want to do this transaction, I have to open an account over there. If I want to open an account, I have to sign these 15 documents. If I want to do this, I want to basically transfer money to that person, I have to go to that app and I have to do it over there. Or I have to go into the branch and do this. Like, this is the way. I want to get a loan, I have to go fill out this application over here. I have to re-input all my data. Like, that seems. And that's what everyone in our industry has to deal with. Now, take yourself out of that and look at the best industries. The ones that you admire, the companies and the experiences that when you go into their environments, it just feels right. What are those like? And now, juxtapose that to the experience that your customers face every day. And we make ourselves, we apologize to ourselves a little bit and say, but that's just the way it is. And my message is, that's BS. The hard work that we need to do as an industry is to change it all around. So what does it take? So let's start with the job to be done. This is something that has inspired me from the day, every day I've ever been building in this industry. There's something that I built when I started Purpose. This is the foundations of everything I've done. More importantly, it's the foundations of how we built Wealthsimple. It's the foundations of Purpose. It's the foundations of pensions. It's the foundation of everything. This is it. This is a little chart. I put it up on a whiteboard one day and said, this is the actual thing we need to solve for. And so what is it? It's the customer journey. It is a consumer's life journey and its interactions with a financial services solution or service need. And it starts, you know, when they are young. Most of the first 20 years of someone's life is somebody else making the decision of what they're going to do. And then when they get their first paycheck, they start to accumulate and they start to build need from the financial services industry. And then in and around, you know, T-minus 20 years from their day that they want to retire, they start to think about something more than just accumulation. They start thinking about longevity, principles of how am I going to, meet my long-term goal, the day I go from earning an income, having expenses, and saving, all the way to now the pool of capital that I've accumulated ultimately has to meet my long-term needs. And then there's an inflection moment here. There are two inflection moments in a person's life. Here, the day they get started, and here, the day you go from accumulation all the way to something else. And these are inflection moments because they're moments when the hierarchy of change of an individual changes. Now, why am I showing this to you? I have no problem with anyone copying. My whole principle in my business is because it's a fragmented industry, I don't build for market share. I build because I just want to show what great looks like. I want everyone to copy me. I want everyone in this industry because that's how we make Canadians ultimately succeed. But I will tell you, it's because that is not how an organization is structured. This is not how RBC operates. Instead, a bank and any incumbent, any operator is structured as a bunch of products and a bunch of profit and loss statements. They're organizational design problems. And those organizational design problems lead to the inability to look at the customer at the core of what you do and then solve the problem. The greatest financial product that has ever been built in our industry, ever, is the defined benefit pension plan. And let me tell you why. It's because the bargain was this. You go to work, you work for an organization, you earn an income, and we will take care of both your savings and your life retirement post-work. It's a bargain. You work for us, we take care of you long term. And for the consumer, it is an unbelievable moment of understanding that you have got somebody who has got you. It was institutionally organized. It was designed with a goal, an outcome. And the client, what? They stuck around. They were employed long term. And they stayed and they lived happily in retirement. And what did we do over the last 40 years? We took the greatest financial product, we broke it apart, we put it into pieces, and we called it choice. That is what our industry does. Why did they do that? It wasn't choice. It was for the benefit of us. Why? Because our entire industry operates in agency. Our entire industry operates between those who have money and those who need money. Simplicity, everything. I like to just break it down to that. And that is called agency. And the wider that spread is, the more money is to be made. The tighter that spread is, the more efficient you got to be. And so choice oftentimes can feel right, like we're giving you choice, but oftentimes it's just an opportunity to create more agency. So, what does it take? There are two things that are really important. To build a customer-first organization, to think like this, there are, one, you need to have a mindset. You have a mindset shift in the organization, the way you design the company, the way you think about the job, the way everyone in the culture of the organization wakes up and says, this is what I do. The second is something that's unsexy, and that is data. This is a huge problem. I go back to that comment I said earlier about what's everyone's ignored for so long, the basic principles of, how you run a business. And it starts with, yeah, there's a lot of infrastructure, processing, all that kind of stuff, but one of the most important paramount things is data. And we have ignored the concept of what it means to be a data-native organization. And what does data-native organization mean? Data-native organization does not mean I went to the cloud. Data-native organization is a company where information flows freely through the company and it doesn't get stuck, whether that be on someone's desktop, whether that be in some, one of the 5 or 7 CRMs that the organization runs. Doesn't get stuck in some business unit. Doesn't get stuck in someone's head in a one-on-one or a team meeting or in some Word document. But information flows through the organization. Communication of information. That's a data-native organization. And why is that important? Because data-native organizations both enable us to think about the customer and actually reorient an organization to be customer first. I talk a lot about this idea of take the seams that our customers feel and bring it in-house. Force us to deal with the seams, force the customer never to deal with the seams. And then the second is it feeds one of the most important technological revolutions that we are facing in our lifetimes, and that is AI, which I'll talk about. You cannot in any way think about AI if you are not a data-native organization. It's just a simple fact. So these are the two conditions that are critical if you want to think and act like an organization that puts the customer first. One is culture, one is unsexy. You got to get started. Okay, so what are the 4 things that I think a lot about today that we should be planning for? One is the principle, and I think about this so deeply, is planning at the center of gravity of a consumer relationship. So today, I go back to that comment of fragmenting everything we do for individuals and calling it choice. Well, what does that mean? I've got asset management firms running money management, ETFs, mutual funds, private assets, telling everybody why we're better than everybody else. We're really good at what we do. We got wealth advisors telling people that I'm a better stock picker, I'm a better portfolio construction person out there. And then I got maybe planners or whatever doing planning on the side. I got insurance people over here. I've got lenders over there. I've got you just that's what the sea of everyone sees, right? But the person in the middle is a human going on a life journey and asking a very simple question: am I going to be okay? That's all they're asking. They don't care what the S&P 500 did last week. They don't care about whether you're a good. Actually, when they think about this comment of I'm a better portfolio manager than the next person, they don't know. And where does that fall in? I'll give you a stat in a second, but where does that fall in is they just don't know. They just say, okay, I trust you, but I don't know. And then they don't understand, and that's the principle of it. But if we actually reorient it, and we put planning at the center of everything we do, it's the first thing, the last thing, it's the way we communicate the job that we do, which is that all we are here to do is support you getting to be answering that simple question: am I going to be okay? At every part of your journey, whether you're 25, when you're 45, whether you're 75, or whether you're 95. Am I going to be okay? That is what our job is. We don't do it today. People talk about, oh, I do planning. Oh, I do this, I do that. No, I'm talking about integrated, true planning that has pure data driving every single decision. And the way I communicate, the way I talk. There's a great stat that I love. They did a assessment of how do people value the services they pay for. And what this basically is I pay money to a service provider, and do I think that I'm getting value for the money I spend? This isn't about do I pay more to one person or less person. It's just do I get value? Number one on the list at 95% is personal trainer. People value their personal trainer. Somewhere down the list at like 62% is financial advisor. Now, financial advisors are critical. I'm a huge believer. It's actually the node in all of this is someone who helps. But I will tell you, that is not a question of do they believe that they're paying too much. It's not about fee level. When asked the simple question, am I getting value for money? I don't know. Why? Because I think my person's good, but I have no idea if the next guy's doing better than this person. I have no idea. So I ask the question, I don't know. But why is that? Because the way they talk to me is that I'm supposed to be judging them relative to the value output that they say they're supposed to be doing, which is get me a better return or get me a better outcome. Why do they like the personal trainer? Why? Because that person doesn't come in and say, I'm smarter than you, I'm better than you. All they do is they show up at 5 a.m. when you don't want to wake up. They're an accountability partner. When you're on your 5th rep, they make sure you do your 6th. When you don't want to take that, extra kilometer, they make sure you do it. Because they have a set of goals that you and them have aligned on, and their entire job is to make sure you meet and achieve your goals. That is what our industry should feel like. And when our industry feels like that, our customers will actually say, I don't care how much they charge me, because I believe I'm getting huge value. We sit here and we talk about fees and this and that and commoditization across this industry. It's hobnosh. Customers are willing to pay for value. We can keep trying to arbitrage regulatory changes and all this stuff to get around fee changes, but at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is are we delivering value to our customers and are they willing to pay for it? And there is a huge amount of value to be provided. Second, AI. Everyone in our industry is afraid of AI. Everyone's excited about AI. What is it? AI is a phenomenal opportunity, and it will hit every single component of what we do, from the delivery model to the choices of our customers and how they interact with us, to the infrastructure layer, to the processing layer, every single component. It is a phenomenal opportunity. Let me start with how we operate our businesses. First and foremost, go back to the point. You can be in one of two ways as an AI platform player. You can either be a firm that likes to cosmetically, tell your people, whatever you were doing, do it a little bit faster using AI. No different than, hey, if you used to calculate like this, you can use Excel. Hey, if you used to use this, you can use that technology now. Yeah, it gets you some time back. Most organizations will never know what to do at that time. Most people won't be able to, it's just fragmented. But that's what we're doing. That's what 98% of organizations are doing today. Why? Because every single time you want to work with AI, you have to feed it context. Data native organizations don't look that way. Data native organizations are the organizations that take AI and have embedded it into the way they work, and they're asking themselves from first principles, I know we do it this way today. How should we have done it? Let's go back to the basics of the job to be done in this and actually redesign the entire way we operate our organization. That's a data native organization. That's an AI first organization. That doesn't happen unless you've got your data right. Second, delivery model. AI is going to be fascinating, and it's going to be challenging even my own mind. I fundamentally believe there's a very simple principle. Our industry is in the business of trust. Trust is a layer. 10 years ago, that layer was this thick. Through technology and automation, it's getting thinner and thinner and thinner, but it still is a layer. The question is, how thin does it get? I have this debate all the time with some of my partners. Is it going to be 1%? Is it going to be 2% of the layer? It definitely isn't going to be 20% of the layer. But that doesn't mean that it could go to zero. There are lots of people who believe that AI could be a zero. And guess what? I will challenge you. If we continue to operate our industry the way we are, as not a customer-first organizations or industry, it may go to zero. Why? Because, as I said, AI may just be good enough for me relative to what I got. But that would be really shameful for us if we let that happen. That trust was broken down because we let it happen. The opportunity needs to be shifted on the other side, which is AI will enable us to focus more precision on the most important principle of the delivery model that matters. That 1 or 2 or 3% layer can be so precise and value add. How many people in this room spend 70 to 80% of your time on the operations of the process of what you do versus the actual time spending time with customers? Ask yourself in the organization, how much time are people in my company working and dealing with the customer problem versus pushing paper from one side of the desk to the other? That's the opportunity. What would it look like if 95% of your people's time was exclusively focused on the customer itself and solving the problems on their behalf? That's the opportunity. That's the layer. It can be very thin, but it can be very, very powerful. But it will be a challenge for many of us, and if this industry doesn't change the way it operates, I promise you, AI, there will be many people who will just say, AI is good enough. And it's going to get stronger and stronger. It's not stopping. Tokenization and infrastructure. One of the most powerful things that I really want to say, the back end of this business has huge opportunities to be restructured. Now, a lot of people hear tokenization, they think Bitcoin, crypto, fine. You say what you want. You can block in your mind all that stuff. You have to think differently. You have to shed all that mindset. Tokenization is a very simple thing. It's how ultimately two people in a trustless environment can interact with each other. What is it that the infrastructure of our industry is? It's exactly that. It's the way that two people who are in a trustless environment can interact with each other on anything, whether that be value, trusted layers, documentation, agreements, whatever it be. Tokenization is that principle. And it is structurally 1/1000th or 1/10,000th of the burden that the current infrastructure of our industry operates under. So when people talk about tokenization, and a great first use case would be stablecoins, of course, it's going to get a lot of attention. This isn't about like, oh, it's another money market fund that just sits on the blockchain. This is about breaking down all the barriers of how interactions of financial solution, payments, technology, infrastructure, everything operates. How the industry flows, how money moves. And it will be powerful. And now take that and tokenize and build the infrastructure across everything we do. Money payments across the world, remittances. Infrastructure for back-end deposit-taking platforms. Fintech applications that are stuck. The first iteration of fintech, when you look at like the 2010 to 2020, 2016 timeframe, was really exciting, but guess what? It was all cosmetic lipstick on a pig. Because it was all about how do I build a better experience for the customer? How do I build a better, call it application, maybe a better call it product? But at the end of the day, it got stuck because it sat on Visa rails or JP Morgan Chase's payments platform, or the Swift network, or the deposits of the banks. And so it got stuck. The agency could only be brought like this. What tokenization will do is allow it to go like this. It is powerful. And if your organization and you are not focused on how you are building with it today, then you're missing out. Because it will be moving fast. And the last, tokenization plays into this. One of the most important things that has kind of been principle in my mind is non-jurisdictional banking, non-jurisdictional financial services. What does that mean? Today, we are a bunch of jurisdictions governed, and ultimately everyone operates inside the borders of those jurisdictions. They're communities. It started with community banks, it went to Canadian banks or US banks, and then it went to global banks that are ultimately a global brand. Like JP Morgan is not a global bank. JP Morgan is a global brand and a series of jurisdictional banks around the world that interact with that brand. What does that mean? Customers don't, I'm a customer of JP Morgan. I can't transfer money to my JP Morgan account in the US. I can't do anything. I still have to interact with two different banks. That's jurisdictional banking. Non-jurisdictional banking sits above jurisdictions. Tokenization, blockchains, infrastructure will play that. The first iteration of that was on payments rails. So you saw firms like Revolut, one of my favorite companies, built a whole platform around a card platform globally. But it's still jurisdictional. Great product, but it's still a jurisdictional business on payments rails. What will non-jurisdictional banking look like? It will be a single experience, fluid anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter if you're in Brazil, Korea, Canada. Your ability to flow and move seamlessly with no jurisdictional oversight in that structure is powerful. The challenge, this will truly challenge our regulators. It is. In fact, I am so shocked that they are enabling stablecoin legislation. I guess when the US basically allows it, everyone has to allow it. But I will tell you, it is going to challenge our regulators. Their entire being is this: we control our borders. But it's going to be phenomenal. When we talk about globalization, social media globalization, and now financial services globalization in a true way, pretty exciting. These are the 4 things I want to talk about. I know I'm out of time. If there are any 1 or 2 questions, I'm happy to answer it. My challenge to everyone in this room, this isn't waiting for you. It is happening. Make a choice. Either be complacent, sit here, do what you're doing today, or go build. Over to you.